In this video, I just want to talk about having a resilient mind, a mindset that withstands criticism. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, Mindset and Methods. My name is Andrew, and I talk about all kinds of things relating to having a strong mindset, the methods to execute that's aligned with a strong mindset. As you can see, I'm experimenting with new formats. I've recently bought this new microphone as inspired by some of the new creators that I've had the pleasure of interacting with in the community. And so I would like to keep up the consistency, and so this was a much needed equipment, I think. But today in this video, I'd just like to talk to you about perseverance. It requires a level of mindset to withstand criticism, I think. And right now I'm in the middle of it. It's something that I'm wrestling with because recently I've received some criticisms, I suppose. Not necessarily negative feedback, but something of a feedback that I'm not so accustomed to because I'm so used to praise and compliments. And it is because I do value work and I deliver high quality stuff, and I'm someone who certainly doesn't want to be known or associated as one who do things haphazardly or with minimal effort. And so I would like to share 5 things I'm learning even now relating to how to process and what it feels for me emotionally as well, and how to recover from it and what are the steps to take. And so let me tell you a story first. I'm doing my PhD, as I've mentioned in my previous video, and with PhD students and PhD candidates you have a supervisory panel, and my supervisors of course are there to guide me and to help me with my research, developing my proposal and how to do things correctly according to academic standards. I kind of know what to expect when interacting with supervisors, but I wasn't so sure when I received feedback in relation to my proposal, and it wasn't the most positive of feedback, let's just say. It was littered with comments, and let's just say you could count in one hand the positive ones. And so that's lesson number 1. It's an information, not an attack. My first instinct as I was reading those feedback and comments was this feeling of judgment, and my immediate knee-jerk reaction is to defend myself and to justify it and to comment right away and to create excuses as to why I've written what I've written, and that was a very real thing. And if you're experiencing that, I think that's just a very normal reaction to defend yourself, to shield yourself from quite a harsh comment, at least in the way I took them first time. And as I was reading through them, I was becoming more disheartened, and the imposter syndrome started to kick in and started speaking in my mind, almost saying, yes, I was right, and you're not cut out for this is terrible, and you're not good enough, and all this. And it's certainly true. When you're reading a string of comments that's just negative in relating to how I express myself and my research design, in my literature review, not enough, not comprehensive enough, it really questioned my competency and what am I even doing here in the first place. But what I've done after experiencing those emotions was just read the comments and then walk away. And not from the challenge, not from the PhD. I mean, walk away from my desk, take the time to breathe and maybe take a walk, journal, write my feelings down. And the important thing about this break is that understanding that this is just my initial emotion. Although honest, it isn't the most helpful because it can lead to a very impulsive reaction. And so that's what I've done. I slept overnight, thought about it some more, and came back to it the next day. And what I've come to discover is that it was just information. It was feedback on how I was doing. And it was actually just an opportunity, an avenue to improve. Those comments were helpful markers for me to refine further. And as it turned out, I was on the right track. I just needed some guidance. And I now have reframed my perspective and seeing those comments as helpful markers to help me rather than to put me down. These, after all, were my supervisors. They are for me and they want me to do really well, and they understand this far better than I do. And so I've looked at those comments as being helpful and respond to them accordingly, and then tackle my document again, even if it meant deleting sections of useless paragraph. One of the comments said was, with all due respect, this is all waffle. And yeah, as you can tell, I am a good waffler. And but when you're putting your thoughts down as a research document, you can't. There's no room for waffle. Every line and sentence needs to be concise and deliberate and clear. So I took that on the chin, and yep, you're right. This paragraph does need to be refined and rewritten again. The second lesson that I'm learning is that there is this thing called a disappointment gap. And by that I mean this gap between your ideal self, that is the ideal self that I have in my mind, how I perceive myself to be this super efficient, optimized person who has things in order. That's not the case. In reality, I am full of flaws and full of mistakes. And so this gap between my two selves, the one that I perceive to be the ideal and the real current one, which I am right now talking to you, is where this disappointment feeling comes from. And so realizing that there is this gap, and that over time, through having a growth mindset and having a good system and processes in place, closes that gap slowly, bit by bit. And this is actually an improvement gap. So instead of framing this as a disappointment gap, this is actually a room to improve. And now I can tackle this disappointment as a challenge. So if you're feeling like this right now, know that you're not alone. Everybody feels this way. This is why we have imposter syndrome, and we have these kind of thoughts creeping into our minds. It really is not a bad thing altogether. So we can choose to embrace them, or we can choose to run away and feel defeated. So I encourage you, do not feel defeated. This is just where it comes from. You have an ideal version of yourself, and your current self simply doesn't stack up at the moment. We will never reach this perfect ideal, I think. I don't think so. And so we can strive to aim that direction at least, and work at improving in all areas. The third thing I want to talk about then is asking the why question. And by asking this why question, this transforms the problem into a solution. So for instance, with my PhD proposal, I could ask why is my supervisor, commenting very negatively or harshly or very frankly, and then the because answer starts to surface. Because he is actually right. Because I am veering away from my initial research question. Because it isn't flowing well. I am waffling. And those are true. Another instance that I want to share with you, another anecdote, is when I was criticized for not doing my job well. And I received it as a form of an email, and again, my knee-jerk reaction was to feel disheartened and disappointment. And knowing what I needed to do next, I had to retreat for now, absorb and process my emotions properly, not letting it control me, slept overnight, and came back to it the next day. And by asking that why question, transformed this problem into a solution. There were indeed gaps in my performance, and now I can work to improve those gaps, those failings. I am now able to tackle and refine for next time, and I took action. I replied. Again, my first instinct was to reply by defending myself. But as I thought about it, I've absorbed each point of criticism and acknowledged them, actually saying, "You're absolutely right." And then I proceeded to apologize and admit that I was in the wrong, or at least I was underperforming or dropping the ball. And no excuses, just admitting that, and then propose to do better next time. And because I will do better next time, now I have to refine my workflow. I have to be diligent even more, paying attention and managing my time and tasks properly. And the fourth thing I just want to encourage you and me in this process of persevering through negative criticisms is to cultivate a level of self-compassion rather than adding your own voice in this self-criticism. In fact, what ends up happening is that our own selves amplifies the criticisms we've read or heard about from others. It isn't actually as big as we think it is. But what happens is our inner monologue magnifies this and amplifies this, and then it keeps repeating in our mind, especially at night when you're about to go to bed. You can't go to sleep because you're thinking about that critic. And so I would like for us, if we can, to catch that, and instead of self-criticism, we apply self-compassion to give ourselves a bit of grace, a bit of slack that, yes, okay, I have dropped the ball in this, but at the same time, I didn't do too badly. This isn't really a big deal. I can bounce back from this. And having that grace applied to you will give you the motivation to keep going in the process. Now, I'm not advocating for making excuses. I do think there is a place for making a legitimate excuse, but where there is none, catch yourself. Be conscious whether you're beginning to defend yourself and start making excuses. Admit the truth, if it is indeed the truth, because a friend or anybody who speaks truth to you is actually more caring rather than someone who just gives you all the compliments and it's not true at all. That just leads you to a far more disappointing outcome. So understand it, reframe it, put it in its rightful place. It isn't as big a deal as you make it out to be. And what I would advise as a step is to take action. Do something about it, tangibly. If I drop the ball in this area, what can I do to improve it? And so that's what I've done, and that's what I'm doing. And part of processing my emotion through that is writing things down. If I journaled about it, I can read over it again the next couple of days, and it would actually feel that it's not that big a deal. Your mind has a way of flushing out and reducing the anxiety over time. But when you've written it down, it forms as an outlet for you to vent out, especially when it's very emotional at first and very heated and very strong and intense. So yeah, I would encourage us to write it down, or even talk to your spouse, your wife, your husband, your friend, to process it with you. I hope you have good friends to chat with and confide these vulnerabilities with. And then finally, just to be pragmatic about it, to respond with action. Create a system for learning and taking action. Put things in place so that you will mitigate the mistakes, and so that you won't repeat it, and you'll be able to move forward with a bit of confidence. It really is a matter of whether you get back up when you fall. It's actually okay to fall down. It's actually okay to fail. The important thing is you get up, and when you do get up, you can keep walking, moving forward, progress, grow. If you stay down and have a little pity party for yourself, you will just spiral towards more disappointments. The voices will get louder, and it will actually discourage you to do the right actions moving forward. It will actually cause you to not do anything and be despondent and be lazy as a result. And so I just wanted to share that with you in this video. To have a persevering mind really requires a way or a process to understand your emotions at first, and then to pick yourself up and move forward. This will actually train your brain to be more resilient in the future, and you'll be able to handle greater challenges, and you'll be able to think critically whether the feedback is true or accurate, and you'll just become a stronger and more refined person overall. And so I just wanted to share that today. And if you have any feedback at all, write in the comments. Have you had any experiences of disappointment, either for yourself or others, and how did you overcome that? What are your process or your mental procedure so that you're not stuck for a long time? Thank you for listening to me. Please hit that like button or subscribe to my channel if you want to hear more. And if you like this new setup, I'm in a cafe, and sometimes I feel I'm more productive when I'm in these public spaces. The ambient noise kind of function as a white noise in the background that helps me do more work. So until next time, I'll see you.